language education, there's something we don't even talk about enough. Respect. Not the kind that we teach in the classroom rules or post on bulletin boards, but the kind that lives quietly inside our interactions. How we listen to others, how we interpret what we say or what they say, and how we navigate difference. Today's episode is about intercultural competence, a phrase that sounds academic, but in reality touches the most human part of language learning, our ability to coexist, to connect, and to communicate across cultures with empathy and understanding. So, let's get ready to dive into this intercultural awareness. So sit comfortably, get your coffee, and let's get started.
Woo! Let's go!
When we talk about teaching languages, it's easy to focus on grammar, pronunciation, or vocabulary. Yet language is more than structure. It's a reflection of culture, identity, and worldview. To teach a language is to teach a way of seeing the world. Every thank you, every pause, every tone of voice carries cultural meaning. The goal, then, isn't just fluency. It's intercultural fluency, the ability to move between cultures without judgment. The term intercultural competence was popularized by scholars like Michael Byram, who described it as an ability to see relationship between different cultures, both internal and external, and to mediate between them. In simpler terms, it's not only about knowing what people do in another culture, but why they do it and how to interact respectfully in that context. Let's picture this. You have a student named Julia. She's studying English in Spain and loves chatting with her teacher. But one day, her American classmate suddenly says, "You're so direct." Then Julia is confused. She thought she was being honest. Meanwhile, her classmate finds her tone almost confrontational. This is where intercultural competence lives, in a silent gap between intentions and perceptions. And here's the pedagogical challenge. How do we teach that? Intercultural competence can't be memorized like verb conjugation. It's not a test section or a set of flashcards. It's a mindset, cultivated through curiosity, reflection, and real encounters. So, why don't we just start with what we can teach? First one, awareness. When we help learners become aware that communication is shaped by culture, we open the door to empathy. Teachers can do this through contrastive analysis, comparing greetings, politeness formulas, or nonverbal cues. For example, in Japanese, silence may convey respect. In Spanish, it might signal disinterest. In English, it could mean hesitation or agreement. Context defines meaning. And by encouraging students to observe and discuss these nuances, we help them understand that different doesn't mean wrong. It simply means situated. The second step is attitude, cultivating curiosity rather than judgment. When learners encounter something strange, a gesture, a phrase, a ritual, do they mock it, ignore it, or explore it? The classroom can model this exploration safely. Teachers can use case studies, videos, and authentic materials to discuss why might this behavior make sense in that culture. This invites empathy rather than correction. Another powerful approach is critical incidents. Short real-life stories where miscommunication happens. Students analyze what went wrong, not to assign blame, but to uncover cultural expectations behind the misunderstanding. This kind of exercise turns discomfort into discovery. Let me share a story. Years ago, I had a student from South Korea who studied English in London. On her first week, she kept apologizing to everyone. Sorry, 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 every time. One day, her teacher said gently, "You don't need to apologize for everything." She smiled and said, "But in my language, we use apology to show care." The teacher paused, realizing that what seemed like insecurity was actually kindness. That moment was intercultural competence in action. The teacher didn't correct her. She learned from her. Now, language teachers also need to practice self-awareness. Every teacher brings their own cultural background into the classroom, from how they give feedback to how they manage time. A teacher from Germany may value punctuality and clarity, of course. One from Latin America might prioritize flexibility and relationship building. Neither is right or wrong, but both need to recognize how their teaching style can either build bridges or barriers for students from different cultural norms. This is why intercultural reflection should be part of teacher training. We can't expect students to embrace diversity if teachers themselves haven't reflected on their own assumptions. As educators, we're cultural mediators. We stand between worlds, translating not just words, but values. Now, let's talk about language as respect. When learners use polite forms like usted in Spanish or honorifics in Korean, they're not just learning grammar, they're learning to navigate relationships. Teaching respect through language means showing how linguistic choices carry social meaning. It's about understanding that saying please or thank you isn't universal. Some cultures show gratitude through action rather than words. One fascinating study by Claire Kramschke noted that every utterance carries both linguistic meaning and symbolic power. When a student chooses a word, they position themselves socially, as formal or informal, as insider or outsider. This awareness transforms language learning into a lesson in humanity. We also need to acknowledge the emotional side of intercultural encounters. Many learners experience cultural shock, frustration, or embarrassment when navigating a new linguistic world. Teachers can normalize these feelings. Instead of saying, "That's wrong," we can say, "That's interesting. In this context, it means something different." This subtle shift validates the learner's effort while guiding them toward cultural adaptation. There's also a social justice dimension here. Where we teach intercultural competence, we teach respect for difference, which is deeply political in a world where misunderstanding fuels conflict. Language classrooms can be spaces of peacebuilding, where empathy replaces prejudice and listening replaces labeling. Now, let's imagine a classroom where students debate global issues, climate change, gender equality, migration, but also reflect on how these topics are discussed differently across cultures. This teaches not only language skills, but also democratic dialogue. Students learn that disagreement doesn't have to mean disrespect. Another technique I love is intercultural journaling. After each lesson, ask students to reflect on something cultural they noticed, a phrase, a gesture, or tone that surprised them. Over time, this builds metacultural awareness, the ability to notice, question, and adapt. Of course, technology now gives us incredible tools for this kind of learning. Through virtual exchanges, learners can connect with peers worldwide. Platforms like eTwinning, Tandem, or even simple pen-pal programs allow students to practice empathy in real time. But as teachers, we must guide these interactions ethically, ensuring students approach cultural difference with humility and curiosity, not as tourists of culture, but as guests. In multilingual societies, intercultural competence also means recognizing power, whose language is valued and whose is marginalized. When we validate students' home languages, we teach them that respect starts within. Translanguaging strategies, for example, allow learners to use older linguistic resources, rather than silencing one part of themselves to sound native. Respect begins with inclusion. Ultimately, intercultural competence isn't a destination. It's a journey of becoming more human. Every time a learner struggles to express themselves in a second language, they're also learning patience, resilience, and humility. Every time a teacher pauses before correcting a mistake, they're deciding to honor intention over form. So next time you step into your classroom, ask yourself, am I teaching grammar or am I teaching understanding? Because in the end, the words we teach may fade, but the respect we model lasts a lifetime. Language, at its heart, is not about perfect communication. It's about meaningful connection. And connection begins with respect. That is something we all agree for sure. And until next time, keep speaking with empathy and listening with respect.